So I'm just redoing a video that I can't find. I don't know what happened to it. But so I tried to move out from my family, and you know, when you've lived in these kind of abusive scenarios for decades, it's really hard to pull it off, even without the whole Zerzet song, you know, the full-blown, whatever we're calling it, COINTELPRO, gang stalking, organised stalking, targeted individual thing. Even without that, it's hard, right? But anyways, I found a place. It was a small sleep out on a property shared with some other people, and it looked ideal, you know, it was affordable. Yeah, it didn't leave much money for food or anything, but it looked ideal because it was at least had its own shower and toilet, and it was kind of relatively self-contained. Like I'd still, you know, have to cook with them and stuff, the other people, but it didn't go well. The people, they were lovely, they were empathic, they were great at communication, they were very considerate, very concerned, very loving. They're pretty much like the opposite of my family, and I thought, oh, this will be good, you know, this could go well. I didn't know any of their views on, you know, how aware of the evil they were, what they thought of, you know, the medical situation the last 2 years, or any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, they were alternate, you know, and they knew like that politicians were scumbags kind of thing and that kind of stuff. And we talked for like an hour or so, and you know, then they were going to get back to me, and you know, they gave me the go ahead to move in, and I moved in, and I didn't say anything obviously about any of this targeting or anything, or narcissistic abuse or anything. I just tried to keep it all to myself and keep my so-called political views to myself and everything, and lost a bit of their habitat. I don't know if they like it like this or not. But anyways, it didn't go well. They would come over and ask me like, is everything alright? Are you okay? How are you doing today? Is something wrong? And at that time, like, I was going through these severe sleep disruptions. Like, I always have the ringing in the head, but I was having terrible sleep, and I'd wake up looking like shit. I always do, you know. I always do the last, I don't know, 5 years at least. But you know, in their eyes, I'm pretty sure that I would just look like I was absolutely wasted, or I'd had a really rough night, you know, getting drunk or something. And no, it wasn't that at all. In fact, if I did have a few beers, I would actually sleep better, and I'd wake up feeling better. So it was actually the full-blown inversion going on. And anyways, it was like torture, pretty much. It's psychological torture. I shouldn't use that word so flippantly. You know, if you throw around the word torture willy-nilly, it's kind of like the word narcissism. It loses its severity if you overuse it. But yeah, it was really tough psychologically, because I would have to live a double life. You know, at least with my my parents who don't give a fuck about me. Yeah, I am still living with them, you know. Price of fucking accommodation. And trying to find, as I say, trying to find a fucking people to live with who are at least on a similar page that you are. It's impossible, man, nowadays. And yeah, it's actually easier to live with my folks because at least I can rant and rave, or I don't really rant, I just talk about it calmly and say, well, how are you going to sleep when you're being microwaved? Yeah, the infrastructure's fucking me up, blah blah blah. I just talk about it, and at least that way I can blow off a little bit of steam. But with them I was like keeping it all to myself, and you might say why, you know, just tell them. But as soon as you mention that stuff, you know, instantly it's never going to be the same again. There's going to be this tension, you know, he's crazy schizo, he's a conspiracy theorist and all the rest of it. And so I didn't mention any of this stuff, you know, as I've said in another video, like the one with the what was it, internal conflict about speaking out about the evil or whatever, or the horror. I don't know if it was worth it, you know. There's people that had their own troubles in that, but they seem pretty innocent to the diabolical government kind of thing. You know, they're saying like Jordan Peterson was a conspiracy theorist madman. I don't agree with him. He's probably just another controlled opposition, you know, shill puppet. I don't know, but they, you know, if they had any political stance, it seemed to be pretty left leaning, like new left leaning. So this isn't a very concise ramble, but it's just not a good day for me really to do that. I'm still probably going to post it. I make like 3 or 4 different versions of a video to try to get it as good as I can, but yeah, it's hard. Like, it's like all the mayhem and shit and disruptions. You know, I don't have a quiet abode where I can sit down and actually concentrate on anything. It's just this unstable SRAD, you know, short range area denial narcissists walking around with their terrible adrenaline inducing energy, you know, and it makes it so damn hard to fucking concentrate on anything. You know, I have to fucking flee the scene in the morning. The body can't handle it. It's too much of a fucking harvest to ignore. And what do they say? The body knows the score. You know, the body doesn't lie. Oh, man, too many ducks. Not enough birdseed. You know, man, even getting this 5 kilo bag from the end of the store and bringing it all the way to the counter, even that is a fucking mission for me these days. You know, I'm like hauling it like I'm climbing Everest. You know, I'm only fucking like early 40s. Sorry, tangent. Back to those people that I was living with. So they were pretty much left-leaning people, I would say, and you know, anything like truth-wise was a you know, a crazy conspiracy theory, and like the first time I became aware of how it may go was, oh man, trying to multitask, eh? It's just impossible. Hey Goose. So that we have this dinner thing, right? We're at a restaurant with them and their friends before I moved in, right? And I was feeling like so bad, actually, like just drained, like to the point I may pass out. And I was sitting there at the end of this table and eating my dinner. I just want it to be over with, to be honest. I'm just barely like keeping conscious, I would say, like literally. Having to have like deep. Anyway, sorry, I just cut to it. Sitting there eating the dinner, and then suddenly, I guess, I don't know if it's like AI hive masters like beam this into his head, say troll the bird, feed a man with this. I don't know if it was that or what happened, but they start talking about one of them starts talking about Alex Jones and how he's being sued for $1 billion. And then someone else is like, oh, who's Alex Jones? And then another one's like, oh, he's some crazy conspiracy theorist. And then another person's like, oh, screw that guy. And that said it right there in a fucking nutshell. Like, the ignorance, like, they don't even know who he is. You know, 2 or 3 of them. And they're like, oh, screw him. And I'm sitting there just eating my food, head down, like, not going to say anything. I'm going to keep this to myself. I'm going to see how this will go, you know, how this living situation will go if I just shut up and I say nothing and you know, and I was just going to try to play it the wise, fucking, like, patient, you know, Zen master man, and it didn't go well. Like, just week after week, it was like, it was just a real challenge to hold my tongue. You know, how are you doing today? Is everything all right? And seemingly, you know, they were genuine, well-meaning people. I know some people out there will say, they'll be going like, nah mate, they're all in on it, it's the Truman Show, they're NPCs or they're agents or whatever, and I don't know. Maybe it was the nicer kind of agent that doesn't do meth and isn't ex-military and doesn't blast you with loudspeakers. Maybe this was like the good cop and I'd had the bad cop, I don't know. Personally, I think they were genuine people, they were caring people, innocent, loving, and I held my tongue because I didn't want to go in there into their home, their, you know, their sanctuary, and just drop ugly, really ugly fucking truth bombs. I didn't want to do that, so, because once you drop them, you can't take them back, you know. What's been said is said, and, you know, chances are if I did, they wouldn't believe me. It always goes like that, doesn't it? Pretty much. There's this gaslight thing, and for whatever reason, they just never break out and actually think or listen to what we say. And if they did, and they did listen to what I said, and I traumatized them massively, as you know, anyone with some sensitivity in them would be massively traumatized by learning about MK Ultra, learning about mind control and frequencies and, you know, organized stalking and ritual abuse and things like that. They would be shaken, you know, and I don't want to do that to them. I don't want to go into a place where people are coping all right and then be the cause of them not being able to cope anymore. I don't want to say too much about them, but, like, you know, it's a tricky one because you want to paint a bit of a picture, at least a fair picture of the scene, just because people will be like, well, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that, or but anyway, they were on like various medications to cope, and yeah, I don't want to do anything that would send them, you know, back into a drinking bender or something like that. So I think I did the right thing in the end. I just like, basically I didn't even live there much. Went back to my folks and I paid the fucking, I paid as long as I said I'd stay there, and it was basically, I wasted quite a lot of money for a place I didn't even stay at because it was too unbearable. It's just better to be with NPDs that you can ramble and complain it, to, and they just ignore you. That was far easier for me than holding my tongue around people who do care. So I think some of you truthers forget how traumatic it is. Like all those decades or however long you've been looking into stuff, all those decades of trauma, and you manage to cope however you do it, smoking doobies or drinking or whatever. It's a real, I can't even imagine what it's like to drop someone into that, like without any like tippy toeing it into it. Damn, that's an awesome sight, eh? I'm trying to remember everything, like all the little triggering incidents in that situation where I was living with three pretty much like new left leaning people. I say new left, basically just government programs pretty much, like because I used to be a left leaning person back when the left was quite different about 20 years ago. I really can't multitask. It's the mind is a shadow of its former self. It's fucking hard to keep a train of thought. So yeah, one of the guys I talked to a bit, and he really did care. Like he really did care, and he'd asked me how I was doing and stuff, as I said, and it just got annoying because I pretty much did have to self-censor, because like when you start saying a little bit of what happened or the truth or what your actual problem is, the actual problem, not just saying I'm a crazy man and like smearing yourself and covering up the abuse and the torture, when you start going there a little bit, they'll probably say like, oh, it could have been this, it could have been that, and then you got to say more and then more, and it's like, where do you stop? And then before you know it, you're going on like, the government is microwaving me and all this kind of shit, and it just escalates really quickly. It's like people don't even feel comfortable talking about the regular narcissistic abuse, let alone the governarch's version of it. Hey Hoppy, did well to get up there, buddy. I wonder how you guys are coping out here. I like hanging out here with my busted duck mates. Mr. Hoppy's got one leg. At least the ducks abuse each other up front and honestly. So just before there was a little duckling, and he was in the little round pond with the spring in it where I refill my water bottle, and I don't know what the hell happened. He got his leg stuck and he was screeching and I don't know if it was like an eel or something had him, because I don't know how you could get I don't know how a duck could get its leg stuck under a rock or something, but I had to like jump in there and I was like put my hand underwater. I was kind of wary I might get bitten by an eel or something, but I pulled all these rocks up, and he got free, this little duckling, but he was like pretty damn shaken. Mother duck was like jumping into the fray, and I had to like push her out of the way. I'm just stalling because I'm trying to remember if there was anything else with these. We call them flatmates when you got to live with people, share a house with people, like flatting, that's what it's called in, I think it's a UK kind of terminology. But yeah, it was a weird experience. Like, you see how regular people get to live. You know, one of them was really into their coffees, and you know, he would do it all like very calculatedly, like to the, you know, right down to the tiniest milligram when weighing it out and getting the grind right and everything. And it made me remember, like, or think back at least, while I was watching him make his coffee, and I was thinking, have I ever been like, because I used to be quite OCD, I guess you would say, or quite particular about things. And I thought, man, it's been like so long since I've ever actually had the time and the peace to you know, do something very thoroughly. Because with the stalking shit and the disruptions, you never have any peace, and you're like, at least for me, I end up being like, I just got to get it done, you know, got to fucking hurry up and do this and whatever, you know, throw a scoop and a half of coffee, boom, and then boil it up, boom, and then go. Like, you don't have the peace, you know. And I was just watching it, man, it must be nice, you know. That's what I was thinking, it must be nice to leisurely, like, weigh out your coffee and not a care in the world, you know, seemingly. Like, I'm sure that they have, you know, everyone has their worries and stuff, but then put it this way, they're not having their living quarters bathed in like huge amounts of radiation or anything. So energy wise, there was like this tension. It was kind of strange. There was this real tension. I don't really know what it was about. You could say like, oh, they're all actors, Truman, and they were worried you were going to bust them and stuff. I don't know. Not sure. It's pretty dark, that one. It's got like a marble, like the bench tops. It's kind of got that kind of patterning. So one other thing that one of the guys said to me, I was saying like, I said something about going to a naturopath because yeah, they were the only ones that helped me, and I said how it was really expensive, and he was well-meaning again, but he was like, oh, some of these alternate healers, they don't have much education, you know, they're very expensive and they're not always the best. And then, you know, he told me about a chiropractor he'd been to that it did sound pretty wacky actually. You know, I don't know much about them, but they sound pretty all over the place. You know, sound pretty far out, some of them. But I was like, man, I wanted to say about look what the bloody doctors are doing the last 2 years. Like, what the fuck, you know? Like, I only ever go to them as an absolute last resort nowadays. I said to him though, like, no, the naturopath actually helped me. Like, she was the only one that helped me, and I've even been to an energy healer and they helped me. I didn't bother telling him, like, at least with those people I can be honest. I can talk about like neuro weapons or anything really, organised stalking, you know, Wi-Fi or trauma, because at least they know trauma. Talk about mind control or anything, you know, and they won't report you, whereas these fucking doctors do. I do wonder, like, potentially the situation could have been a setup, because I don't like to jump to these really far out conclusions. There's no way to prove it, is there? But like, I searched for a place with a sleep out, you know, a little separate self-contained place on a property. It's called a sleep out. I don't know if you call it that where you're from, but there were only 2 places that had sleep outs on this website that I was checking. So, you know, it easily could have been a setup, I suppose. I mean, of course, normies will be like, they would never go that far. This is your crazy man talking, you know. Your paranoid delusions of grandeur and, you know, mass schizophrenia or whatever. But I don't know, you know. In hindsight, you know, I probably would have been better off living in a big building with just individual rooms where no one really has to deal with each other. That probably would have been better. Just keep to yourself kind of thing. But it's very, very hard, you know. You can see why they've destroyed the property market to create this situation where you've all got to live together kind of thing, and you can't just find your own place to be left alone. Because I'm sure most people going through this targeted individual thing, they'll just keep it to themselves, you know. And it's a real fucking I don't know, just a psychological torture, really, to have to put on this fake life that everything's fine while they're killing you with radiation, killing you by, like, you know, activating your fight or flight all the time. None of them talk about it as well. Like, just, I've only got like a minute before it shuts off. So to say, like, all these fucking groups, like your vagus nerve group and all these trauma groups, none of them want to talk about the DARPA technology, you know, the ability to fuck with your nervous system from afar. And none of them, you know, even see therapists talking about your body naturally generates this electricity somehow, like, and that just sounds like more bullshit to cover up the external frequencies they hit us with. Anyway, reluctantly I've got to turn this off. I've only got a little bit before it cuts off.